Alright, hello everybody. This is Grudge from the Grudge Report. I am going to go through the basics on the Glyph setup and crystal setups on a PVE tanking brawler, or I mean it's generally going to be a tanking brawler anyways. So the way I'm running it from a crystal perspective is I gotta find threatening. Because I'm low geared right now at 433, so you need that extra 62% aggro. I'm front tanking obviously, so I use a Wrathful Niviot, which increases crit power by 1.58 or 58% when attacking monsters from the front. I put the carving on for the extra 3.2% crit chance, and I do a focused, which gives me a 78% more crit power against enraged monsters. And the idea is to keep them enraged as much as possible, so that everybody's enraged crystals will benefit from them. I've been running Keens, which is increasing crit factors, and with my PVE setup I run basically all carving and maximize as much as the crit factor as possible. And you can see without any buffs I'm running around a 260 plus 261 crit factor, which when you run with a Mystic gets up to about plus 321, and it's pretty good. Then I run Hardies. I don't know why I have this Relentless in here, probably because I didn't have another Hardy, but now I do. And the Keen Bursts again in all of my other slots. Okay, my PVE setup is, now here's the only difference, is this power link. When I am doing a lot of BAMs and Isle of Dawn, I use the energetic quick dash, so I take that off and I put that into a power link counter, which is to say when you do a perfect block, and you actually have to do the counter, you have to do a block, it can't be in the Growing Fury block, so you actually have to do this block. It gives you a 60% chance to increase all damage by 25%. So if you stack that one with the other power link, which is your roundhouse power link, and you get those at the same time, you get a 40% damage increase. And what I try to do is I try to time my counter mechanic with either a haymaker when a haymaker is ready. So I'll do a counter, okay, or a block, a purposeful block, okay, which is on my K-bound for a counter. Okay, get this, I got a 60% chance of that. If it doesn't happen, you roll with it anyways. So I do a block, and then I get roundhouse, and I'll either do a haymaker or a ground pounder depending on which is up. Okay, and that's what I do. So I don't know why I have this one here. Decreases cooldown by 20, and the energetic counterpunch. Yeah, that's for my BAM setup as well. I usually put that in grounding roundhouse, which adds frontal defense effect to jackhammer or pile driver if the skill is used within 5 seconds. This is good when you are not in Growing Fury, or when you're kind of first coming up to a boss. It's always, I kind of like having it all the time, you know, because generally if I don't have it, then I'm when I fall out of Growing Fury, I get hit a few times, because the thing is with tanking in Tera is you have to constantly be generating threat by contacting the boss, by hitting the boss or hitting the monsters or whatever they are. So that being said, if you keep this in here, then you can continue to do damage and block at the same time. So the effect is you do a roundhouse kick, and then you can either do a jackhammer, a pile driver, or a haymaker, and it will be blocking during those. Ground pounder automatically blocks at the same time, so you don't need to worry about that. I basically, and I think everybody stacks these glyphs. Now I don't have all the glyphs unlocked yet, so you see some of these aren't blue glyphs, okay, just because I just started this this brawler up again in Ascension Valley. I kind of been staying away from Faith Forest for a little bit, just to kind of take a break from there. Here's my empowered pile driver, increased by 25, 2% additional rage. Sorry, I'll go back to the haymaker. So there's an argument on haymaker to add this 20% chance to eliminate cooldown, which is good, but the truth is it's such a slow mechanic that for the 20% I actually prefer to go through a progression rather than count on this from time to time proccing. But it is pretty nice when it does proc. You can just go bam bam with 2 haymakers. Unfortunately, it doesn't accelerate the animation at all. So increase skill damage by 25% and increase the crit chance by 2.5. I think this becomes 3 when you get the blue glyph. Okay. Again, a roundhouse empowered. Decrease cooldown by 25%, and then power link is increase all skill damage by 15% for 3 seconds. Now, believe it or not, you can actually do a roundhouse, jackhammer, and haymaker or ground pound while that's enabled. So you can actually go boom boom. Roundhouse, roundhouse, jackhammer, haymaker, and they will all be within that. Now, if you're using the counter power link, then you can't. So then what you want to do is you want to do counter, roundhouse. No, you can't actually counter, roundhouse, jackhammer, haymaker. But I typically go counter, roundhouse when it procs, and I go right to haymaker or ground pound. I don't waste my time with jackhammer because even though it's good damage, I like to make sure that I get my haymaker in time, where I get technically a 40% buff in damage. You can see some big numbers, and if you're playing it that way, then you can do pretty good. Okay, empowered pile driver, increase skill by 25. You use this quite a bit. Generates an additional 2% rage. You want to always generate rage as a growing fury spec, or I think everybody's probably growing fury, but that's the way I do it. 60% chance to eliminate cooldown roundhouse. That's actually exactly what you need. You want to reset roundhouse as much as possible. So I do that all the time, and you can see it in my RG video. I do that all the time. So jackhammer, and then that's it. That's all 55 glyph points. Nothing here except for pumped growing fury. Increases power by 25 during that effect. That's just huge. There is an increased aggro feature here, which is another 20%, which is really good. If you can spare the four points from somewhere, but I really don't think I can spare 4. You know, I guess I could take this away and this way. That would give me 6. But then I would have 2 that wouldn't really be used anywhere effectively. So I like the way it's set up right here. Okay, now quick dash and mounting rage, their cooldowns aren't going to be much better, or aren't going to have the energetics, but that's okay, because if you're tanking correctly, you shouldn't be quick dashing too often. All the bosses are set up so that you don't have to really dodge or iframe that many hits. You should be able to block through most of them, and then every once in a while there are bosses that you have to have, or either 2 or 3 where you have to iframe them. I know in Ravenous Gorge there's a few, and not Ravenous Gorge, in RKE there's a few, and I'm never gonna tank there, so I don't really give a shit. That's hard enough just to be a DPS. I wouldn't say never, but for now I'm not. As far as my specs on my my weapon, I always go with decrease all skill cooldowns by 7.2, I succumbed and went ahead and put the damage buffs in there. So I put 9.3 when attacking enraged monsters, and increased damage by 8.6 to the target when the aggro is towards me. Since I'm a tank, it should be towards me most of the time. So technically, those are going to be another 18% damage. But I do put the skill cooldowns, so I want the skill cooldown to be twice. I don't increase the attack speed other than the enchantments, or etchings, which you can see here at increase attack speed by 3 and skill cooldowns by 2. Movement speed by 6, endurance by 4, decreased duration of slowing effects by 24. For the chest, I put in decreased cooldown of roundhouse kick by 15%, that on top of another 14% skill cooldowns. That on top of the etching gives you about almost a 20% cooldown on roundhouse, which is fantastic. It's kind of always there ready for you, and that on top of the pile driver reset gives you pretty much a chance to keep that 15% power buff or damage buff up all the time. Decreased damage from enraged monsters by 10%, decreased damage by 8% from the monster with aggro, and then I raised my HP by 8. Pretty typical setup for PVE. Gloves, everybody does the same thing. Crit factor 9, power factor 5, and attack speed by 2.25. Add the etching, increase attack speed by 2.5 and decrease cooldown by 2. The etching here is increased endurance by 6, and on my boots, the same thing, increased endurance by 5. These are the ones that are available from Isle of Bam blue crystals. Again, I'm only 433 geared. It's not worth wasting my time or money on getting the ones for frost at this point, but I will once I get there. Once I get to frost. Yeah, so that's the glyph and crystal setup, and I guess armor skill set for PVE tanking. All right.